The last inheritance. The funeral reception was winding down when my stepmother Claire stood up, cleared her throat, and smiled that practiced smile I'd seen at 1,000 charity galas. "Before everyone leaves," she announced, her voice carrying across the hotel ballroom like she was addressing shareholders, "there's something we need to discuss about Marcus's will." The room went quiet. I felt my stomach drop. As you all know, Marcus was generous with his resources throughout his life. Perhaps too generous. She glanced directly at me. But in his final months, he came to understand that some people had taken advantage of that generosity. My hands clenched in my lap. Here it comes. So he made changes. Significant changes. And I'm afraid. She paused for dramatic effect. Sarah won't be receiving her expected inheritance after all. The silence was deafening. Then slowly people started to nod. My half-sister Jessica actually smiled. My stepbrother David raised his wine glass slightly, like he was toasting my humiliation. The house, the investments, the business, it's all going to family. Real family. People who actually cared about Marcus, not just his money. I sat there, frozen, as murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. These people, my father's wife, his stepchildren, his business partners, they were all in on it. "I'm sorry, Sarah," Claire continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But Marcus felt you'd become too dependent. This is probably for the best." The applause was soft but unmistakable. My own family, if you could call them that, was celebrating my disinheritance at my father's funeral. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. "Wow," I said, my voice barely audible. "You actually did it." Claire's smile widened. "Did what, dear?" "This." I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila envelope. I wondered if you'd have the guts to pull this stunt at his funeral. So I came prepared. I placed the envelope on the head table with a soft thud that seemed to echo through the room. "What is that?" David asked, his confidence wavering. "Why don't you find out?" I said, stepping back. Claire snatched up the envelope and ripped it open. Her face was smug, dismissive, until she saw the first page. Then her expression changed. The color drained from her cheeks. "What?" she whispered, flipping through the pages. "What is this?" "It's the truth," I said calmly. "Every lie, every manipulation, every time you poisoned him against me. It's all there." Jessica grabbed the envelope from her mother. As she read, her mouth fell open. "Mom, what is this about the medication?" "Don't," Claire snapped, but it was too late. "What medication?" I asked, my voice cutting through the room. Jessica's eyes were wide with horror. "It says here that you were giving him extra sedatives. That you told the doctor he was agitated when he wasn't." The room erupted in whispers. Claire's face went white. "You want to know what really happened?" I said, my voice rising. "Let me tell you how we got here. My father Marcus was a good man. A brilliant businessman, but more importantly he was kind. When he married Claire 12 years ago, I was 25 and skeptical but hopeful. I wanted him to be happy after my mother's death from cancer 5 years earlier. At first things were fine. Claire was charming, sophisticated. Her kids, Jessica then 16 and David 14, were polite enough. We all played the part of a blended family. But slowly, subtly, things began to change. It started with small comments. "Sarah's so independent, isn't she, Marcus? Sometimes I wonder if she really needs us anymore." Or, "It's nice that Sarah has her own life. She doesn't have to worry about family obligations like the rest of us." Then came the guilt trips. When I couldn't make it to every family dinner because of work, Claire would sigh and say, "Your father misses you, you know. He talks about you all the time. I think he feels like he's lost you." When I got promoted to senior partner at my law firm, the congratulations were hollow. "Well, work is certainly your priority," Claire would say. "Some people are just built differently." The worst part was watching my father slowly pull away from me. Our weekly lunch dates became monthly, then sporadic. Our phone calls got shorter. When I'd visit, he seemed distant, distracted. "Dad, are you okay?" I'd ask. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired." But I knew something was wrong. He was changing, becoming someone I didn't recognize. He was forgetting things, mixing up dates, seeming confused about conversations we'd had. Claire was always there with explanations. "He's under a lot of stress with the business. The doctor says it's normal for men his age." Or, "He's been having trouble sleeping. The medication makes him groggy." I suggested we get him evaluated. Claire bristled. Are you questioning my judgment? I'm his wife. I'm with him every day. I know what he needs. 2 years ago everything escalated. Dad started forgetting my birthday, our lunch dates, even my name sometimes. Claire said it was early onset dementia, that the doctors were monitoring it, that there was nothing to be done. It's probably best if you don't visit too often, she told me one day. You upset him when he can't remember things. He gets agitated. I backed off, believing her. Hating myself for it, but believing her. The last time I saw my father alive he was thin, frail, barely responsive. Claire hovered over him like a guardian angel, adjusting his pillows, monitoring his medication. He's comfortable, she assured me. That's what matters now. He died 3 weeks later. But here's what I found out after the funeral, what no one knew I was investigating. Claire had been slowly poisoning my father with unnecessary medication for over 2 years. She'd convinced multiple doctors that he was anxious, agitated, confused. She'd gotten prescriptions for sedatives, anti-anxiety medication, even antipsychotics. She'd been drugging him into compliance, making him weak and confused, isolating him from me. And during those months when he was supposedly too sick to see me, she'd been manipulating him, rewriting his will, convincing him that I was only after his money. You can't prove this, Claire said, her voice shaking as she held the documents. Actually I can, I replied. I had his hair tested. Postmortem toxicology. The levels of benzodiazepines and antipsychotics in his system were off the charts. No legitimate doctor would prescribe that combination. The room was dead silent now. I also had his medical records subpoenaed. Want to guess what I found? The symptoms Claire described to the doctors. Aggression, confusion, agitation. They were all lies. Every single report was based on her word alone. And the timeline? It matches perfectly with when she started drugging him. Jessica was crying now. Mom, tell me this isn't true. It gets worse, I continued. I also found out about the financial abuse. Claire had power of attorney. She'd been moving money out of his accounts for months. The business that was supposedly failing? It was actually thriving. She'd been siphoning profits into accounts under her children's names. David stood up abruptly. This is insane. You're just angry about the will. Sit down, David, I said coldly. Because we're not done yet. I pulled out another envelope. This is the real will. The one my father wrote 18 months ago before Claire started drugging him. Before she convinced him I was the enemy. Claire lunged for it, but I stepped back. In this will, he leaves everything to me, with provisions for Claire to remain in the house for 5 years and Jessica and David to receive their college funds. He also established a trust for Claire's future care. He was generous even to the end. That's not legal, Claire stammered. The new will supersedes. The new will is invalid, I interrupted, because it was signed by a man who was being systematically poisoned by his wife. I've already filed a challenge. I have medical evidence, financial records, and testimony from the private investigator I hired. The room erupted in chaos. People were shouting, crying, demanding explanations. But here's the thing, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. I'm not just fighting for the money. I'm fighting for my father's memory. For the truth about what happened to him. I looked directly at Claire. You stole his final years. You made him forget who he was, who I was. You turned him against the daughter who loved him. And for what? Money. Claire's composure finally cracked. You don't understand, she screamed. You had everything. You were his precious daughter, his little lawyer, his pride and joy. What did I have? What did my children have? We were just accessories. So you decided to take it all, I said quietly. You decided to destroy him to get what you wanted. I gave him the best years of my life, she shouted. I took care of him. I earned that money. You murdered him, I said, my voice deadly calm. Slowly, systematically, you murdered my father. The silence that followed was absolute. 3 months later, Claire was charged with elder abuse, fraud, and wrongful death. The investigation revealed that she'd been planning this for years, researching medications, finding compliant doctors, building a case for my father's mental decline. Jessica and David were cleared of wrongdoing. They'd been manipulated too, raised to believe that I was the greedy one, the outsider who threatened their security. The will was overturned. My father's assets were restored to his original wishes. Claire received nothing. She's currently serving 7 years in prison. But none of that brought him back. I sit in his study now in the house where I grew up, surrounded by his books and photographs. I found letters he'd written to me during his final months. Letters Claire had never sent. In them he was lucid, loving, confused about why I'd stopped visiting. "I miss our lunches, sweetheart," one letter read. "Claire says you're too busy for your old man now, but I hope that's not true. I hope you know how proud I am of you." I cried for hours when I read them. Not just for him, but for the time we lost, the conversations we never had, the goodbye I never got to say. People ask me if I feel vindicated, if getting justice was worth it. The truth is, I don't know. I have his house, his money, his business. I have legal vindication and public sympathy. But I don't have him. I don't have the father who was stolen from me by someone who was supposed to love him. What I do have is peace. The knowledge that I fought for him when he couldn't fight for himself. That I exposed the truth when everyone else was willing to believe the lies. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what love looks like sometimes. Not just caring for someone while they're alive, but fighting for their memory after they're gone. The house feels empty without him, but it's clean now. Free from the poison that Claire brought into our lives. I've turned his study into a memorial filled with photos of our happier times. Before she came, before the lies, before the end. Sometimes I imagine what he'd say if he could see me now. Probably something about how proud he is that I became a fighter, that I didn't let them win. "You did good, kiddo," I can almost hear him say. "You did real good." And for the first time in years, I think I actually did. Update. It's been 6 months since I posted this story. Claire's appeal was denied. The civil suit against her estate was settled. Not that there was much left after legal fees and restitution. Jessica reached out to me recently. She's in therapy trying to process everything that happened. We're taking it slow, but there's hope for some kind of relationship. David is still angry, still blaming me for destroying the family, but I understand his pain. I've started a foundation in my father's name focused on elder abuse prevention. It's not much, but it feels like something positive coming from all this darkness. Someone asked me in the comments if I forgive Claire. I think about that a lot. Forgiveness isn't about her. It's about me, about not carrying that poison forward. But I'll never forget what she did. And I'll never stop fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. The truth is, some wounds don't heal. Some betrayals cut too deep. But you can learn to live with them, to build something meaningful from the wreckage. That's what I'm trying to do now. Not just survive, but truly live. And maybe in some small way that's the best revenge of all.